Hey everybody, this is Erica, the technology nerd who likes to film stuff, and a couple of weeks back I rented a Surface Pro 3. That's right, I rented a Surface Pro 3 because I couldn't justify the price of buying this device when I was not sure if I was going to like it or not. So what I did was I challenged myself to using the Surface Pro 3 as my main computer for several weeks to decide if this is actually something that I would purchase or not. And at the end I wanted to let you all know if I decided whether I was really going to go for it. So this is not going to be an exhaustive review, but there are several things that I want to talk about that I think might help you decide if this is the computer for you or not. So the entire point of this product is to be a laptop, computer, tablet replacement, everything in one very small, sleek package. I know for me it looks like it's huge, but actually it's not. It's under 2 pounds. The version that I have here is the i5, 128 gigabytes of internal solid-state storage. So just starting with size, that is the main thing that I care about here. I have compared this to many different devices that are on the market, and they're just not as powerful as this one machine is. I know Asus is going to be coming out with another one of these tablet type things, but unfortunately it's going to be fanless, so I don't think it's going to have as powerful as the CPU inside of it. So that's kind of a no-no for me. I really do want a real replacement. So when I look at something like my MacBook Pro, it's incredibly heavy for me because I'm small. I'm only 5 feet tall, or even just a little under. It's ridiculous. So let's just say that I am 5 feet tall and I am carrying around a huge MacBook Pro, and that's very heavy for my back. When I go to events, press events especially, I see that from my backpack I've got these tear marks in my skin from carrying around a laptop that's pretty heavy and everything else that's in that one backpack. So I see that with this, it's so light. I can put it in a smaller backpack, and that makes it a lot easier to carry around because I can fit it into a smaller backpack. So this device is not quite an ultrabook and it's not quite a tablet. It really is something in between. And I think that the real appeal here is going to be the form factor. I myself have had some questions of who in the world is actually going to buy one of these, who in the world is actually going to be using one of these. But interestingly enough, I take a lot of plane flights and I've seen quite a few business professionals using one of these over a laptop. What is nice about this device is that, yes, it can function as a laptop, but when you need it to be more compact on a plane, you can easily fold the cover underneath or put it in a bag, do whatever with it, and still have a very powerful Windows tablet. So I have seen quite a few people walking around with these. For me though, even though they call this a tablet, and sometimes I do use it in the tablet mode, I am most interested in using it with the type cover. So far as a tablet experience, it's been okay, but for someone who has small hands like me, it can be a little bit weird to maneuver around and to type on. Plus the autocorrection is not so good on this device. And while I do like the pen and some of the features that the pen has, I don't find it to be all that useful, so it's definitely a plus to get this device with this type cover. Unfortunately, they don't sell both of these together. This is $130, but I think that the combination really is worth it. My favorite part is definitely the convenience of how compact this gets. If I'm in a hurry, it feels really nice to be able just to slap the cover on top of it, put down that kickstand, and I'm ready to go. So how does this actually feel to type on? I really like the type cover. The experience is actually pretty nice. The keys are a little bit loud. And the trackpad also feels nice and works pretty well. You've got left and right click. And I've been able to use the trackpad with no problems even when doing video editing. The one problem that I do have is that sometimes the scrolling feature stops working, so the 2-finger scroll to go up and down a web page. And the only way to fix that is to disconnect the cover and then reattach it. And that's something that I've seen has been an issue for a while and it hasn't been fixed. This isn't something that's just happening with this version of the Surface Pro. The one thing that people are not going to like is just how top heavy this feels, and it can be a problem. The fear would be when setting it on your lap and using it, it might be easy to knock it off your lap and onto the floor. I haven't had that issue yet, but that's something that I do see a lot of people complaining about. At least though, this type cover is very well attached to this unit. I wouldn't do this otherwise. You can see that it's very strongly adhered here, so it's not just going to fall off. And also you've got that extra magnet here so that it gives you that extra bit of security when typing. So let's go ahead and see what the use looks like on my lap in laptop mode. There is one thing that I want to point out is that I recommend wearing pants or having a blanket or something draped over your legs because this gets quite sharp. But you can have this thing on your lap, holding it, doing whatever with it, and it doesn't get very hot, so I find that so pleasant. You're not going to have a bottom base sitting on your lap burning your legs or other things that should not be burned, especially on men. So, device sitting in lap, you can see me, small person, very, very tiny person. And there we go. You can see that I'm wearing shorts. And this is where it's just not so lovely. After some time, this here really starts to dig into my legs, and that's not so comfortable. But otherwise, these many different degrees of angles are just fantastic. If I have my leg upward, for example, I can set the device like so, and I can continue typing. You can see that's not so stable, but it's not going to fall onto the ground. That's not really something I'm worried about. So that's really nice, just being able to adjust like that. And I do that all the time. Now, a moment ago, I spoke very briefly about the pen, saying it's got some nice features, but I'm just really honestly not so impressed with using it because it ends up seeming like a feature that kind of gets lost or forgot about sometimes. What sucks is that there's no place, there's no silo or anything to put it into, so you're just like, okay, well, they included this little thingamabob for me to put it into. But now if I'm not using that type cover, where's my pen? I mean, come on. And it seems that it would be very easy to lose. If you don't buy the type cover, because this does come with the tablet, you don't have to buy this extra, I think it's $50 if you lose it. You have nowhere to place it, but they do say, oh yeah, you can just use the magnetic ability and just stick it like so. That's nice. That works. Okay. But honestly, lame. But I don't have all that much remorse because, like I'm saying, the pen is not such an impressive feature. If you're somebody who is going to be using OneNote, it's a good thing. If you're someone who is an artist, that's another great thing. There are other applications besides OneNote that this can work with. If there is pen support in an application, it should work. And also Microsoft Office, Excel, yada yada, those things should work with the pen too. I think the most annoying part though is that I really can't go about the interface and scroll through with it. I have to use this bar at the bottom and scroll through, and that's kind of counterintuitive because I'd rather really just use my finger. So again, you've got to use the bar at the bottom. If this is going to be like a real tablet, I do feel that I should be able to move about the interface more easily. It is nice that we do have some mouse features on this pen, such as right click, left click. And of course, getting into that whole tablet motif, it is nice to be able to use this, but in all honesty, the poor pen gets kind of forgotten about here and there. Handwriting recognition is actually pretty good though, and the things that you can do here and there to edit your text if something doesn't come out correctly is pretty fun. But the pen more or less feels more like an afterthought. So what have I been using this device for? What have I been able to do with it? Well, I'm a video blogger, so a lot of the things that I do are filming videos and editing videos, and I was not so convinced at the beginning that I was going to be able to use this to edit videos on. Mostly because I've been hearing complaints about the thermal throttling because they've made this thing thinner. It's not like the Surface Pro 2 where it can sustain long usage without throttling down really low. But things like Photoshop have worked just fine. Things like Adobe Premiere have worked just fine. I have not seen any throttling. I think where you come into problems is if you expect to do a lot of gaming on this device, heavy graphics gaming. Really, don't expect to use this as a gaming device because people end up playing games and then they see that the frame rates just plummet, and that is because of the thermal throttling. So if you want a Surface type device for gaming, go with the Surface Pro 2. But for things like video editing in Premiere and also doing some Photoshop editing, it's been totally perfect. Of course, you can also use it for everything else, web browsing and editing documents, and all those type of productivity tools work just fine with this. Very small, compact, very powerful. Doesn't get incredibly loud with the CPU fan either. That's something I noticed with my MacBook Pro, is just how darn loud it gets. So I mentioned that my configuration is the i5, there is the i3 and the i7 version. Now if you're someone who actually needs a real productivity tool, I'd probably just go with the i5 and be happy with that. The i3 is not going to be as snappy or as quick. And then you have people who went and got the i7, the most expensive version, because they wanted to do some gaming and then found out that it just throttles to where it's pointless to get the i7. So I think that the best one to get if you need a productivity tool is the i5. It's excellent for productivity and being able to edit on the go. So definitely no complaints of what I've been able to use it for so far, although I realize that the display, even though it's 12 inches, is bigger than the other Surface displays. It's actually not so good for certain interfaces like Photoshop. For Adobe Premiere, this size of display works just fine because you can push that little squiggly key. I don't know what you would call it exactly, but it takes whatever window you have active and it blows it up to full screen size. But for things like Photoshop, the interface just looks so tiny. It's just not adapted for this. That brings me to another concern that people talk about, is the scaling in the Chrome web browser, or whatever web browser. Out of the box, text looked really fuzzy in the Chrome web browser, but I was easily able to go inside the registry and add a little modification, and I was able to get really nice looking sharp text afterwards. So if you've been told that text looks really fuzzy when using Chrome, there is something that you can do to fix it. And now I love it. I think it's incredibly usable. I hate Internet Explorer. Who doesn't hate Internet Explorer? So yes, keep in mind that you can make the text look nice and sharp, so don't let that deter you from buying this. Now in terms of using this as a media device, just say that you want to install games and use the gyroscope or accelerometer and play Asphalt 8 till your heart's content. All that is all well and good. But the one thing that I'm a little bit bummed about is when I watch Netflix, the calibration of this display is not the greatest. So unfortunately, if you really want to rely on this device to watch Netflix, when you watch darker scenes, you can see that the grayscale really deviates. So instead of seeing dark grays, you end up seeing purple and green instead. And that just completely ruins the media experience. So unfortunately, I really can't use this as a machine to watch Netflix. Honestly, if you're in a room that has a lot of ambient lighting, it's pretty difficult to see those dark grays that look purple and green. So that might be its only safe suit, is if you are watching movies in a bright room. But if you're going to chill out in bed and have your tablet sitting with you in the dark, it's atrocious. Now, of course, I did try to calibrate it, but unfortunately, the calibration did not fix the problem. So this looks to be an issue that's pretty well seated. So for me, that is kind of a deal breaker. Now, as for battery life, I've easily been able to get myself through the day, though mostly I've been keeping this plugged in, especially if I'm going to be doing some video editing. In terms of how long this takes to recharge, I usually keep it on the charger for 2 hours, and at 2.5 hours, you will see a full recharge, usually from 0 to 100%. So what is the verdict here? Is this something that I am going to purchase? Well, I have to say that before I found out about the calibration issues, I was all for this device. I was seriously about to run out and purchase one without any other questions. But as soon as I saw that it had some issues with the calibration, I was like, not for that price. No, I'd want a media device that could actually work as a media device and also be my overall computer on the go. I want something that has productivity and also can do very well when I need to just chill out and watch some Netflix. And since it does have those calibration issues that I can't fix, I don't want to shell out the money for this. It would have been worth it if it had both productivity and great media capabilities, but nope, not happening. I suppose if you're someone who really doesn't need this for media capabilities, or if you're someone who has a setup where you could simply just plug in a calibrated monitor and just use it that way, that's totally a viable option. You could just plug this into an external monitor that looks a lot better for media and go about your merry way, but I want a tablet that I can just sit and use in bed and just chill out with, and it's just not something that I can use that for, and because of that, I can't justify the price. Now, I did ask on Twitter and also on Google Plus if other people saw the same problems I'm talking about, and yeah, they did as well. So it looks like it really is just a problem here. Now, if I could get a sweet deal on this, and if it came down a bit in price, I'd still be all over it, because I really like this device. I really, really like it. The only reservation I have, really, is the issue with the calibration. Why? Just the couple of things that I really wanted it for, it's a disappointment. So let me all know what you think. I know a lot of people are going to think this is a gigantic waste, just go get an Ultrabook or something. But it all comes down to the size and the form factor, and when you're a small person like me, a very little person, you want something that's easy to carry around, and this fits the bill. I can't find anything else right now that has an i5 inside of it that's of this form factor. So that's just the way it goes. I'll probably wait a little longer to see what comes out, or see what happens with the next iteration of the Surface Pro, so that's all I have to say for now. Great device, has a little bit of disappointments for media junkies, but still, for productivity, it's wonderful. Don't completely bypass it. People who need a thin device on the go really appreciate this.